Have you ever heard of a general who, at just 9 years old, swore an eternal oath to destroy his enemy? A general who marched war elephants over the snow-capped Alps to bring a superpower to its knees? This isn't a fantasy epic. This is the incredible true story of Hannibal Barca, born in 247 BC in Carthage. A powerful city-state on the coast of modern-day Tunisia, Hannibal was destined for greatness. His father, Hamilcar Barca, was a legendary general himself, and he instilled in his son a deep, burning hatred for Carthage's arch-rival, the Roman Republic.
Imagine this.
A young boy in a sacred temple, placing his hand on a sacrifice and vowing to be an enemy of Rome for his entire life. This single moment would define his destiny and shake the foundations of the ancient world. Hannibal didn't just inherit his father's hatred. He inherited his military genius. His early career was forged in the rugged lands of Hispania or modern-day Spain. There, he wasn't just a commander. He was a leader who ate with his men, slept on the ground beside them, and was always the first to charge into battle and the last to retreat. He honed a diverse, loyal army of Carthaginians, Iberians, Gauls, and Numidians, turning them into a disciplined and formidable fighting force. But Hannibal knew that fighting Rome on their terms was a losing game. He needed to do something audacious, something no one would ever expect, decided to take the war directly to them. In 218 BC, Hannibal embarked on one of the most daring military campaigns in all of history. He set out from Spain with an army of tens of thousands of soldiers, thousands of horses, and, most famously, 36 war elephants. His destination? Italy. His path. Directly over the treacherous, freezing peaks of the Alps, Roman strategists dismissed the idea as impossible. They believed the mountains were a natural fortress that would protect them. They were wrong. The journey was a brutal ordeal. The army faced blizzards, avalanches, and attacks from hostile mountain tribes. Men and animals froze to death or plunged into deep ravines. By the time Hannibal descended into the plains of northern Italy, his army was halved, and only a few elephants had survived. But the psychological impact was immense. Hannibal had appeared in Rome's backyard as if from nowhere, a terrifying specter emerging from the mountains. He had achieved the impossible, and the war for Italy had just begun. The Romans, shocked and enraged, sent legion after legion to crush this audacious invader. And one by one, Hannibal dismantled them with tactical brilliance. At the Battle of the Trebia, he lured the overconfident Romans across an icy river into a perfectly laid trap, annihilating their army. Then, at the Battle of Lake Trasimene, he used the morning fog to hide his forces in the hills, ambushing an entire Roman army strung out along the shoreline. It was a massacre, one of the largest ambushes in military history. In less than 2 years, Hannibal had destroyed 2 massive Roman armies. Panic gripped the city of Rome. The phrase Hannibal ad portas Hannibal is at the gates became a common cry to frighten children. The Romans, a people who prided themselves on their military might, were being systematically outthought and outfought. But Hannibal's masterpiece was yet to come. In 216 BC, near a town called Cannae, he faced the largest army Rome had ever assembled, some 80,000 men, determined to finally crush the Carthaginian menace. Hannibal was heavily outnumbered. Any conventional general would have been annihilated. But Hannibal was anything but conventional. He arranged his much smaller army in a unique formation, a weak, bulging center of Gallic and Spanish infantry, with his elite African veterans held back on the flanks. As the battle began, the massive Roman legions charged forward, easily pushing back Hannibal's weak center, just as he had planned. The Roman formation, confident of victory, pressed deeper and deeper, their lines becoming compressed into a dense, unwieldy mass. It was the perfect trap. As the Romans pushed forward, Hannibal's crescent-shaped line inverted. His elite African infantry, positioned on the wings, then wheeled inwards, slamming into the exposed Roman flanks. At the same time, his superior cavalry, having already defeated their Roman counterparts, circled around to attack the Roman rear. The trap was sprung. The mighty Roman army was completely surrounded. What followed was not a battle, but a slaughter. The Roman soldiers, packed so tightly they could barely lift their weapons, were cut down from all sides. By the end of the day, tens of thousands of Romans lay dead. The Battle of Cannae was a tactical masterpiece. It's a perfect double envelopment or pincer movement. It was Rome's darkest day, a military catastrophe on an almost unimaginable scale. To this day, the strategy of Cannae is studied in military academies around the world as the textbook example of a battle of annihilation. Following Cannae, Hannibal was the master of Italy. For over a decade, he roamed the Italian peninsula, seemingly untouchable. Yet victory remained just out of reach. Why didn't he march on Rome and burn it to the ground? Historians debate this endlessly. He lacked the siege equipment to take on Rome's formidable walls, and more importantly, he lacked support. The Carthaginian government, perhaps jealous of his success or fearing the endless war, failed to send him the crucial reinforcements and supplies he desperately needed to deliver the final blow. He had won every battle, but he was slowly losing the war. Meanwhile, a new Roman general was rising, one who had studied Hannibal's tactics. His name was Publius Cornelius Scipio. Instead of confronting Hannibal directly in Italy, Scipio did something clever. He took the war back to Africa, threatening Carthage itself. This forced the Carthaginian government to finally recall their greatest general. After 15 years in Italy, Hannibal returned home to defend his city. In 202 BC, on the plains of Zama, the two greatest generals of the age finally met. It was a clash of titans. Hannibal tried to use his war elephants, but Scipio, having learned from past Roman mistakes, had devised a strategy to counter them, creating lanes in his formation for the elephants to run harmlessly through. The battle that followed was hard-fought, but this time, it was the Roman cavalry that proved superior. Hannibal's army was encircled, and for the first time in his career, he suffered a decisive defeat. The Second Punic War was over. Rome was victorious. Even in defeat, Hannibal's story wasn't finished. He turned to politics, trying to reform Carthage's corrupt government, but his old enemies and the ever-watchful Romans wouldn't allow it. Hunted and hounded, he lived the rest of his life as an exile, a military consultant for other kings who harbored a grudge against Rome. But the Romans never forgot him. They pursued him relentlessly across the Mediterranean. Finally, in 183 BC, old and cornered by Roman agents in Bithynia, in modern-day Turkey, Hannibal Barca decided his own fate. Rather than be captured, he took poison, which he had reportedly carried in a ring for years. His final words were said to be, "Let us relieve the Romans of their long-standing anxiety, since they do not have the patience to wait for an old man's death." Hannibal Barca never broke the oath he made as a boy. He remained Rome's most feared enemy until his very last breath, though he ultimately lost the war. His legacy is one of unparalleled military genius. His daring crossing of the Alps and his tactical masterclass at Cannae have echoed through to millennia, influencing commanders from Napoleon to modern-day generals. He was a man who challenged the greatest empire of his time, brought it to the brink of collapse with a smaller, more diverse army, and forever etched his name into the annals of history as one of the greatest military commanders who ever lived. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey into the life of Hannibal. If you enjoyed this story and want to explore more incredible figures from history, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. We'll see you next time.